Hey, welcome back, guys. I just had a couple of stories to tell about failure. I often hear people say, fail fast. As at least Chase Jarvis says that one. Fail fast. Get everything out of the way, and so you can move on to the good things. Like get rid of all your bad shots, so that you can learn what went wrong with all of them, and then start producing amazing shots. Um, so anyway, recently I screwed up and it was hard. It affected me emotionally and things. It affected my wife and stuff, but of course I brought it up and talked to her about it, and we had a nice little talk it out session. And obviously we were both very affected by it, and it was a difficult thing to walk into that space. But after we talked, we actually were more connected than we had been for quite a little while. So it's interesting how we're so afraid of failures and mistakes and saying I'm sorry and talking about our weaknesses and those sorts of things. But in the end, if you actually step into that, it typically goes well. In fact, I was listening to a video by Gary Vaynerchuk the other day, who his wine library was hacked, and several credit cards were exposed and things like that. He personally called every single one of the people who was affected by that and offered an apology in person. And he explains how much that affected his business in a positive way. I'm sure some people never got over it and were angry, but others were very impressed that the owner of the company would personally call them and see if he could apologize first of all, and make any changes or amends to help their relationship as business people, and also as friends, right? So a couple examples of people who made mistakes, right? Like Gerald, didn't Jordan punch was it Steve Kerr or John Paxson, one of those little white 3-point shooters? He punched him in practice. He let his emotion get the best of him, and he did something stupid. And he went home and he said he was devastated by that. He was just so frustrated, and his coach let him know, man, you can't treat people like that. You can't. These are your teammates, And he called him up, whoever it was, or Steve Kerr, I think, and said, I'm so sorry. I let my emotion get the best of me, and that turned into a negative emotion, and then I unleashed on you, and you were not deserving of that. And he apologized in the most sincere way he could, and that's publicized all over the world. Everyone knows that he did that. But Jordan rises, and they rise together to win championships. Charles Barkley spit on a fan. He actually spit on the wrong fan. Somebody was heckling him and just being nasty. And Charles was also an emotional guy. So he turns and he spits, and it turns out it hits this girl, a little fairly young girl. And when the news came, when Charles started hearing stuff in the media about that, he was just like, I cannot believe I just did that. He as mad as he was like, I cannot act like that, and I can't remember exactly how he got to that girl, but he was able to apologize to her, and he was just like, man, she forgave me. She did not have to forgive me. She paid money to show up to that game, and then she gets treated like that, and she didn't have to forgive me. But when she forgave Charles, that changed his life. For him to reach out an apology and be forgiven changed his life, and he started curbing his behavior from then on. He was obviously known as a feisty, fiery player, and he's still funny and still has a voice. He just is a little more conscious about his emotions. So Michael Jordan says, always turn a negative experience into a positive one. He used the word situation. Negative situation into a positive situation. And I believe it's Oprah that said something similar to that if you're willing to learn every failure is a chance for growth. And it makes so much sense. Like when I was talking with my wife, you know, I went in sort of afraid, kind of telling like this story of like, oh man, we're gonna have this big blowout, right? And I recognized I was making up a story of what it would go like, and I said, you know what, that's not true. And like I have enough trust for my wife, and she trusts me enough that even if it's a tough conversation, we're gonna walk through it together, and it's not gonna go, you know, as crazy as my mind makes it up to be. And so I go into that with her, and as I was talking it out with her, all of a sudden these light bulbs are just firing off everywhere, and I'm starting to learn things about myself that I'm like, oh, like make connections. Like the other day I was responding to a tweet by Steve Gutzler, and the thought occurred to me that when we are vulnerable, let's see, let me try and say this again. When we're vulnerable, we expose ourselves to the opportunity for both growth and failure, right? So the fear of the failure keeps most people from growing. They're not even going to go there. They'd rather just try and manage this little box and keep everything the same and keep their comfort zone exactly perfect so that they never have to walk through any fires, but they're not really going to experience any growth and success either. But as I, you know, step into that fear and that, you know, whatever it is, and I understand I might screw it up again now because like circumstances are different, but I'll learn each time. And so as you step through each door of fear and opportunity and vulnerability, you can look back on your life and say, man, I can now deal with all of those situations in a good way, which makes a leader, right? A successful leader. It makes somebody that's a professional. You can walk into any situation that many people fear and just go, oh, I've been here before. I know exactly how to handle this. I can have empathy in this. I can have vision in this. I can shut down all the stupid stories that people tell themselves and the big explosive emotions. Like, I'm good with it because I've dealt with it so many times, gone through so many experiences of this nature. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of share that, you know, encourage you to recognize the stories that you're telling yourself in those areas of fear and shame and where you've made mistakes and where you don't want to apologize or you don't want to admit that you contributed to that failure or whatever. Failure's fine, you know, as long as you learn from it, as Oprah says. Like every failure is a chance for learning. So step into it and grow.